Classic Progressive Rock Albums, episode 1584. That figure number, for those of you a little bit anal retentive, was not true. I was joking there. I haven't got an idea of how many I've made of these. But I'm talking about an absolutely essential progressive rock album. And one of the reasons I like it so much, it's very proggy, but it's a little bit jazz fusiony. And it is this album, The Story of I, by Patrick Moraz. Look at that. Isn't that weird? Here's the vinyl. If you swap it round, you get that in mirror image. I'm looking at my phone and I can read that, you see, because I've got a mirror image of a mirror image. And so if we open the whole thing up, we get that. Look at that. I mean, what does that represent? Because this represents something. This is a concept album by Patrick Moraz that sort of came to fame in the early 70s in the excellent progressive rock band Refugee. And then when the great legendary Rick Wakeman decided to jump ship from Yes after Tales from Topographic Oceans, they pulled in Patrick Moraz, who was more than able to fill Rick Wakeman's great big cape, although he didn't wear the cape, but he made up for it by having an incredibly large hairstyle. He didn't last long though. And the reason he didn't last long wasn't because he wasn't good. He contributed to one of the great Yes albums, Relaya, and Patrick Moraz's influence, especially the sort of jazz rock influence, that's the album when they get as close to the sort of jazz fusion of the 1970s of the Mavish Nutshot, although it's still 100% Yes masterpiece. But of course, the record companies sort of think we've got to start selling stuff. You know, it's 1976, 77. Now everybody's like, they've all been away doing their own thing, and we've got to pull Rick Wakeman back in. And so poor old Patrick Moraz was kicked out through no fault of his own. And he starts making solo albums, and this is one of the solo albums. And I'm going to open it up. Look at that. See, that is what you call a hairstyle. And also, he's got a bum chin. Can you see? He's got one of those bum chins, which I think is essential, really. I haven't got one of those. I wish I did. Essential for being a progressive rock artist. It's either that or a handlebar moustache. I saw a photograph of Carl Jenkins, who used to play from Soft Machine, and he must be in his 80s now. There's a photograph of him, and he still had the white long hair, and he still had this great big moustache, which now was white and was coming out like Jimmy Edwards, who is a British character actor from the 1950s and 60s that I wish I had mentioned as a reference. And he had the glasses on. He just still looked the part. And if you could rock that, you could be a rock star till you're 80 years old. Anyway, that's off the subject. This is a concept album. And it's a concept album sort of grounded in South America, in the sort of mysticism of the Aztec and Maya Empire. I don't really know what this is about, to be honest. I've never really had to get my head around it. But it pulls in a sound from South America, a sound you don't associate with progressive rock. And on this album, he utilises a whole bunch of players that you would associate with jazz rock. And the band he has here, I would say, is one of the greatest jazz rock bands ever put together, with four absolute legends. Because, of course, we have Patrick Moraz on keyboards. And when we say keyboards, we're talking keyboards. He plays on this album a grand piano, a Hammond C3 organ, a mini Moog, a micro Moog, and a poly Moog. All the Moogs are represented here. Taurus pedals, playing with his feet. Mellotrons, Mark 1 and 2. He's got two Mellotrons. How many Mellotrons will I need for this album? At least 2. I mean, this is about as prog as it gets, isn't it? Imagine trying to get 2 Mellotrons in tune. An Orchestron B, a Supersonic Vocaltron, an ARP 2600, a Pro Soloist, Axe synthesizers and string ensemble, a Fender Rose 88, a clavinet, a D6, an AKX Synth A synthesizer, a String Think synthesizer, a harpsichord, a marimba phone, Pace drum synthesizers, DPM digital sequencers, an electronic slinky, pasty gongs and orchestral cymbals, and of course, because it's not complete, is it? If you're making a proper progressive rock album, that's not enough, isn't it? What you're missing, come on, everyone knows, you're all shouting it, aren't you? An Alpine horn. Patrick, but this is like the most prog album ever made. I didn't realise he played Alpine horn on it. I feel a little bit, I mean, I'm a progressive rock musician. I made some progressive rock albums, and I thought I was pretty prog, but no, they made an album with an Alpine horn. That's the great big long one, isn't it? That they blow like that. Go, ooh, it's like a massive Swiss didgeridoo, isn't it? The lineup on this is pretty incredible. We've got Ray Gomez, one of the great jazz rock guitarists of the 1970s, up there with John McLaughlin, Al Di Meola, the guy that put the fire on Mated Drive by Lenny White, that played on all those Stanley Clarke albums. Just a monumental jazz fusion guitarist. And here he is, you know, another classic Ray Gomez album. A very young but very virtuoso Jeff Berlin on electric bass. Now, you know, Jeff Berlin to prog rockers is known as the guy that played in the Bruford band, an absolute virtuoso that took bass to after Jaco Pastorius was probably the next bass player to push it up to another level. I just want to say a side note about Jeff Berlin. He's gotten everyone's nerves recently. Once he got hit social networking, he seemed like become a bit of a musical snob, and it was all about, you know, you're not a good musician unless you can read music, and you'd sat there transcribing Chet Baker solos all day long, and you know all your theory, and it got on everybody's nerves, and he seems like a bit of a curmudgeon. But more recently, he seems to come out and said there's a lot of trauma he went through as a young man, and he that self-loathing that we all have, and I totally understand this, he counteracted by trying to boost himself up. And the recent videos he's said have been full of a lot of love and a lot of positive thoughts. And I thought it's a shame, because Jeff Berlin is a contemporary of Jaco Pastorius, and we should revere him in that way. And a lot of musicians I know, when Jeff Berlin got on their nerves because of his attitude, then started to go for his playing and say he had no feel and all this type of stuff. It's absolutely ridiculous. An incredible bass player. And so I'm championing Jeff Berlin, one of the true greats on the bass. And Jeff Berlin, if you are watching this and this gets to you, I would love to talk to you on my channel, where I've explored these sort of I'm not going to call them mental health issues. They are the things that drive musicians to be special and unique and create. And Jeff Berlin has that mentality, as do I, and I would love to talk to him about that, but also talk to him about him playing with Alan Holdsworth and playing with bloody Frank Zappa and all my favourite musicians. Jeff Berlin, an absolute monster. Ray Gomez and Jeff Berlin. What drummer is going to equal that? Alphonse Mouzon, who played with everyone from McCoy Tyner to 11th House, and then had a whole ton of funky hit records in the 70s. And with his Mind Transplant album with Tommy Bolin, created one of the great jazz rockers. This is a monstrous band. There's a whole bunch of other people on here. We've got a full, a huge Latin American percussion section. I think there's an orchestra on here. You've got Rennie Moraz comes on, and who's obviously related and does a tap dance at one point. You've got the Children of Marat, who don't know even know they're from Switzerland. Maybe they own the Alpine Horn. You've got Veronica Muller, who is talking in French and singing. It just goes on and on and on. It's just so full of different things going on. This here is one of the most monstrous prog albums ever made. And I know why it's not that successful, because for many people, it's just a bit too much. But if a bit too much sounds like your kind of thing, go and check it out. The Story of I by Patrick Moraz. If you enjoyed this little short video, then put a like on it, because I will do more. If you want to see some more, you can subscribe, press the subscribe. But if you haven't, just go and do it now. If you want to join the Andy Edwards Club over on Patreon, you will be able to meet like-minded people, lots of them, who are all into music, and some of them create music. It's a great place for you to share your music if you're making music that does not fit into the mainstream. And also there's a whole ton of exclusive content. You can chat to me. I've played drums on some of the records by my patrons, all that type of stuff. And of course, if you don't want to do that because you haven't got the time, but you still want to support me, I have a YouTube PayPal tip jar down below. Thank you for watching this video. Short and sweet. That's the way to go, isn't it? Thank you. Bye-bye.